Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Don't forget to subscribe and check out my other socials for more. Enjoy. The bell rang, signaling the end of another school day at Westfield High. Students poured out of classrooms, their chatter and laughter filling the hallways. In his office, Principal John Smith leaned back in his chair, a weary sigh escaping his lips. His gaze drifted to the framed photos on his desk, snapshots of past graduations, sports victories, and academic achievements. 30 years he'd been at this school, watching generations of students come and go. A soft knock at the door interrupted his reverie. "Come in," he called out. Mrs. Henderson, the school secretary, poked her head in. "Heading out for the day, John?" "In a bit," he replied with a tired smile. "Just wrapping up some paperwork." She nodded sympathetically. "Don't stay too late. You work too hard as it is." After she left, John turned back to the stack of forms on his desk, but his mind kept wandering. At 58, he felt stuck. The passion that had driven him for decades had faded to a dull ache. He loved the students, but the endless bureaucracy and budget battles had taken their toll. Was this all there was left for him? To slowly fade away behind this desk until retirement? The thought hit him like a punch to the gut. There had to be more to life than this. Some spark of adventure, of possibility. On impulse, he grabbed his coat and headed out. The crisp autumn air felt invigorating as he walked aimlessly through town. His feet carried him down unfamiliar side streets until he found himself in front of a tiny shop he'd never noticed before. The faded sign read, "Madame Esmeralda's Magical Emporium." John snorted. Probably just another New Age crystal shop. But something compelled him to push open the door. A bell tinkled as he entered. The interior was dimly lit, crammed floor to ceiling with an eclectic assortment of oddities. Shrunken heads, exotic herbs, ancient-looking tomes. And was that a mummified hand? "Welcome, seeker." The raspy voice made John jump. An elderly woman emerged from the shadows, her face a maze of wrinkles. "I am Madame Esmeralda. How may I assist you on your journey?" John forced a polite smile. "Just browsing, thanks." Her piercing gaze seemed to look right through him. "Are you certain? I sense a restlessness in your spirit, a yearning for transformation." He opened his mouth to deny it, then hesitated. Was he really that transparent? I don't know what I'm looking for," he admitted. Madame Esmeralda's eyes twinkled. "Perhaps what you seek is a chance to reinvent yourself, to shed the old skin and emerge anew." She rummaged through a cabinet and pulled out a small vial filled with shimmering purple liquid. "This potion grants the drinker their heart's deepest desire, but beware, magic always comes with a price." John stared at the vial, mesmerized by the swirling contents. "How much? For you? $50. It was absurd. He didn't believe in magic, and yet... Before he could talk himself out of it, John handed over the cash and pocketed the vial. What did he have to lose? That night, he sat at his kitchen table, turning the vial over in his hands. This was ridiculous. He was a grown man, not some fairy tale character. And yet... With a deep breath, he uncorked the vial and downed the contents in one gulp. It tasted like liquid starlight. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a tingling sensation spread through his body, growing stronger by the second. The world began to spin. John clutched the table as waves of dizziness washed over him. When the room finally stopped moving, he stumbled to the bathroom. His reflection in the mirror made him gasp in shock. Staring back at him was a stunningly beautiful woman in her early 30s. Long chestnut hair cascaded past her shoulders. Bright green eyes blinked in disbelief. This couldn't be real. John, or rather Joanna, touched her face with trembling fingers. The skin was soft, unlined. She ran her hands down her body, marveling at the feminine curves. "How is this possible?" she whispered. Her voice was a melodious alto. Panic set in as the full implications hit her. What would people think? Her job, her whole life, it was all gone in an instant. She sank to the floor, overwhelmed. Tears streamed down her face as she hugged her knees to her chest. What have I done? The next few days passed in a blur as Joanna struggled to come to terms with her new reality. She called in sick to work, claiming a bad case of the flu. But she knew she couldn't hide forever. As the initial shock wore off, a strange excitement began to take hold. This was her chance to start over, to reinvent herself completely. Why not embrace it? She spent hours in front of the mirror, experimenting with makeup and hairstyles. YouTube tutorials became her new best friend as she learned to navigate this unfamiliar terrain. A shopping spree helped fill out her new wardrobe. At first, she felt like an imposter trying on dresses and heels. But as she gazed at her reflection, a giddy thrill ran through her. She looked amazing. Practicalities had to be dealt with. A discreet lawyer helped her create a new identity as John Smith's long-lost niece. She told the school board she was resigning to care for her uncle who had fallen seriously ill. With her affairs in order, Joanna was ready to embrace her new life. But doing what? She had no idea what career to pursue now. The answer came unexpectedly as she was having lunch at a cafe. A well-dressed woman approached her table. "Excuse me, but has anyone ever told you that you have incredible bone structure? You should really consider modeling." Joanna nearly choked on her salad. "Me? A model? That's crazy." The woman smiled. "I'm Vivian Ross with Elite Model Management. Here's my card. If you're interested, give me a call. I think you have real potential." As Vivian walked away, Joanna stared at the business card in disbelief. A model? At her age? Then again, in this new body, anything seemed possible. What did she have to lose? The next day, Joanna found herself in Vivian's office, perched nervously on the edge of a chair. "Well, let's have a look at you," Vivian said briskly. Joanna stood, feeling awkward and exposed as the agent circled her, examining her from every angle. Yes, I think we can definitely work with this. You're a bit older than our usual new faces, but that maturity could work in your favor for certain types of jobs." She tapped her chin thoughtfully. "We'll need to work on your walk and posing, of course, and you'll need to tone up a bit, but I see real potential here." Joanna's head was spinning. "So, you really think I could be a model?" Vivian's eyes gleamed. "Honey, with the right training and some hard work, I think you could be a star." The next few months, Joanna threw herself into her new career with a passion that surprised her. She hired a personal trainer and spent hours at the gym, sculpting her body into peak condition. Vivian arranged for lessons in walking, posing, and makeup application. Joanna soaked it all up like a sponge, determined to master every aspect of her new profession. Her first casting call was nerve-wracking. Joanna's stomach churned as she waited in line with dozens of other hopefuls, most of them a decade younger. When it was finally her turn, she strode down the makeshift runway, channeling all her newfound confidence. To her shock, she booked the job, a small print ad for a department store. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a start. More bookings followed as word spread about the striking new face on the scene. Joanna's unique blend of mature sophistication and fresh beauty caught the eye of several top designers. Before she knew it, she was walking the runway at New York Fashion Week. As she made her debut, the bright lights and pulsing music filled her with an electric energy. This was nothing like the staid halls of Westfield High. This was excitement, glamour, possibility. For the first time in years, Joanna felt truly alive. Her rise in the industry was meteoric. Magazine covers, international ad campaigns, lucrative endorsement deals. Success seemed to come effortlessly. But Joanna never took it for granted. She worked tirelessly, always striving to improve her craft. Her work ethic and professionalism made her a favorite among designers and photographers. At a charity gala, she caught the eye of famous designer Chloe Beaumont. The two hit it off immediately, bonding over their shared passion for fashion. "Darling, you simply must be the face of my new collection," Chloe gushed. "I've never seen anyone embody my designs so perfectly." The resulting campaign catapulted Joanna to supermodel status. Her face was suddenly everywhere. Billboards, bus ads, TV commercials. She could hardly walk down the street without being recognized. It was a far cry from her quiet life as John Smith. But Joanna found she thrived on the energy and excitement of her new world. Still, there were moments of disorientation. Staring at her face on a giant Times Square billboard, she sometimes felt like she was looking at a stranger. Was this glamorous creature really her? But those moments of doubt were fleeting. Joanna threw herself into her new life with gusto, determined to make the most of this unexpected second chance. Her biggest break came when she landed a multi-million-dollar contract as the new face of L'Etoile Cosmetics. The launch party was a star-studded affair, with Joanna as the guest of honor. As she made her entrance in a dazzling couture gown, flashbulbs popping all around her, Joanna caught a glimpse of her reflection in a mirror. The confident, radiant woman staring back bore little resemblance to the tired, disillusioned school principal she'd once been. For better or worse, John Smith was gone. Joanna Smith had taken his place, and she was determined to live life to the fullest. With her modeling career at its peak, Joanna found herself craving a new challenge. On a whim, she decided to try her hand at acting. Her fame opened doors, and soon she landed a supporting role in a big-budget action movie. The experience was exhilarating, but Joanna quickly realized that acting required a very different skill set from modeling. "Cut!" the director shouted for what felt like the 100th time. "Joanna, honey, you need to actually emote. Right now you're just standing there looking pretty." She flushed with embarrassment. "I'm trying, I swear." "Don't worry," her co-star whispered. "The first few movies are always rough. You'll get the hang of it." But as filming progressed, it became clear that Joanna's talents lay elsewhere. Her wooden delivery and lack of range were painfully obvious, even to her. The movie was panned by critics, with Joanna singled out for her mannequin-like performance. But her name recognition was enough to land her a few more roles in B-movies and straight-to-video releases. After her third disastrous film, Joanna decided to bow out gracefully. "I think I'll stick to modeling," she told her agent with a rueful laugh. "At least there, all I have to do is stand still and look pretty." Her brief foray into acting had been humbling, but also liberating. It was a reminder that success in one area didn't guarantee success in another. And that was okay. Joanna refocused on her modeling career with renewed appreciation. This was where she truly shone, and she was determined to make the most of it. But fate had other plans. It happened during an interview with a popular fashion magazine. The reporter asked about the secret to Joanna's seemingly ageless beauty. Maybe it was fatigue from the long photo shoot. Maybe it was a subconscious desire to finally share her truth. Whatever the reason, Joanna found herself blurting out the whole fantastical story. The magical potion, her transformation from middle-aged man to stunning woman. The reporter's eyes grew wider with each revelation. "You can't print any of this," Joanna said quickly, realizing her mistake. "Please, I was just joking around." But it was too late. The story hit the newsstands the next day, splashed across the cover in sensational headlines. "Supermodel's shocking secret. I used to be a man." The fallout was swift and brutal. Designers who had once fawned over her now refused to work with her. Her L'Etoile contract was abruptly terminated. Joanna's phone rang off the hook with reporters seeking comments, talk shows begging for interviews. But she retreated from the public eye, overwhelmed by the sudden shift from adoration to tabloid fodder. For weeks, she barely left her penthouse apartment, subsisting on delivery food and mindless TV. Her once promising career lay in ruins. What was she supposed to do now? As the media frenzy began to die down, Joanna knew she needed to figure out her next move. Modeling was out of the question now, but she had a sizable nest egg from her years of success. Maybe it was time for another reinvention. She thought back to her days as a principal, organizing school events and fundraisers. She'd always had a knack for planning and logistics. An idea began to take shape. What if she channeled her connections in the fashion and entertainment world into a new career as an event planner? With her insider knowledge and star-studded contact list, Joanna quickly established herself as the go-to planner for high-profile parties and galas. Her first few events were small affairs for former modeling colleagues, but word spread quickly about her impeccable taste and flawless execution. Soon, she was orchestrating lavish soirees for A-list celebrities and Fortune 500 CEOs. Her name became synonymous with luxury and exclusivity. Joanna found she enjoyed this new role even more than modeling. It allowed her to flex her creative muscles while also indulging her love of organization and detail. Plus, she was no longer in the spotlight herself. She could work behind the scenes, letting her events take center stage instead. Years passed, and Joanna settled comfortably into her new life. The scandal of her revelation faded from public memory, replaced by her reputation as the premier event planner to the stars. She was in the midst of planning an elaborate charity gala when it happened. A wave of dizziness hit her, reminiscent of that fateful night so long ago. Joanna barely made it to the bathroom before the world started spinning. When the sensation finally passed, she looked in the mirror and gasped. Staring back at her was the face of John Smith, now in his late 60s. The magic had worn off. Panic set in as John tried to process what this meant. His entire life for the past decade had been built around Joanna's identity. How could he possibly explain this? But as the initial shock wore off, a sense of peace settled over him. He'd had an incredible adventure, experiencing life from a completely different perspective. He'd achieved fame and fortune beyond his wildest dreams. Now it was time for John Smith to fade away, just as Joanna had. He spent the next few weeks quietly wrapping up Joanna's affairs. A carefully worded press release announced her retirement from public life, citing a desire for privacy. His lawyer helped transfer Joanna's assets into a trust, with instructions to donate the bulk of it to educational charities. It felt fitting to use the fruits of this incredible journey to help students, just as he'd always strived to do as a principal. As for John himself, he decided it was time for a quieter life. He bought a small cottage in a seaside town, far from the glitz and glamour of his years as Joanna. There, he settled into a peaceful routine of long walks on the beach, volunteer work at the local library, and quiet evenings spent writing his memoirs. Sometimes when the mood struck him, he'd pull out old photos of Joanna, magazine covers, red carpet shots, candids from fabulous parties. It felt almost like looking at pictures of a beloved relative, someone close to his heart but distinctly separate. He never regretted drinking that potion. The years as Joanna had been a gift, a chance to experience life from an entirely different angle. He'd lived more in that decade than in all his previous years combined. Now, in the twilight of his life, John Smith could look back on 2 complete lifetimes of experiences. He'd been an educator and a supermodel, a school principal, and a party planner to the stars. Not many people could say they'd lived so fully, he mused as he watched the sun set over the ocean. Madame Esmeralda's potion had indeed granted his heart's deepest desire, the chance to reinvent himself completely, to squeeze every drop of adventure from life. A cool breeze ruffled his thinning white hair, carrying the salty scent of the ocean. John closed his eyes, letting the rhythmic sound of the waves transport him back through the years. Back to that fateful autumn day when a restless school principal had stumbled into a mysterious shop and emerged with a vial that would change everything. The memories washed over him like the tide, the shock of his transformation, the dizzying ascent to supermodel stardom, the glittering parties and glamorous photo shoots. For a decade, he had lived as Joanna Smith, experiencing life from an entirely new perspective. It had been exhilarating, terrifying, and utterly transformative. "You all right there, John?" A concerned voice broke through his reverie. He opened his eyes to see his neighbor, Mrs. Donovan, peering at him over the low fence separating their properties. Her weathered face creased with worry. "Just fine, Margaret," he assured her with a warm smile. "Got lost in my thoughts for a moment." She nodded, seemingly satisfied. "Well, don't stay out here too late. There's a chill in the air." As she shuffled back to her own cottage, John chuckled softly. If only she knew the half of it. But his wild adventures as Joanna were a closely guarded secret, known only to him and the handful of people who had been in on the truth. He rose from the swing with a soft groan, his joints protesting the movement. Age was catching up with him now, in a way it never had during his years as Joanna. But he didn't mind. He'd had his time in the spotlight, had tasted the sweetness of eternal youth. Now he was content to embrace the quiet dignity of his twilight years. Inside his cozy cottage, John busied himself making a cup of tea. As the kettle whistled, his gaze fell on the leather-bound journal sitting on his desk. He'd been working on his memoirs for months now, trying to capture the incredible journey of his dual lives. It was a delicate balancing act. He wanted to record the truth for posterity, but also protect the privacy of those who had been part of Joanna's world. There were so many stories he longed to tell. The behind-the-scenes drama of fashion shows, the secrets confided by celebrities at exclusive parties, the rush of seeing his face on billboards in Times Square. But there were also deeper truths he wanted to explore. The unique perspective he'd gained on gender and identity. The way society treated him differently as a beautiful woman compared to his years as an aging man. The freedom and limitations that came with each role. Settling into his favorite armchair with his steaming mug, John flipped open the journal and began to write. The words flowed easily, painting vivid pictures of a life lived in 2 distinct chapters. He wrote about the challenges of learning to navigate the world in a female body, the first awkward attempts at walking in heels, the bewildering array of beauty products, the unwanted attention from men who viewed Joanna as an object rather than a person. But he also captured the joys, the deep friendships formed with other models, the rush of adrenaline before stepping onto a runway. As the night deepened, John's pen flew across the pages. He recounted the dizzying highs of Joanna's modeling career and the humbling lows of her ill-fated foray into acting. He described the panic and exhilaration of reinventing herself yet again as an event planner after her secret was exposed. Finally, he wrote about the bittersweet moment when the magic wore off and he found himself back in his original body. The challenge of adjusting to life as an older man after a decade of youth and beauty. The process of letting go of Joanna and embracing this final chapter of his life. As he wrote the last words, John felt a profound sense of peace settle over him. He had lived not 1 life, but 2. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out my other socials if you want more wonderful content, early access, behind the scenes, and more. All links down below.